So I would love to read you a full comment that we got from one of our pro-choice followers when we had put out and said, we are interviewing Dank Pro-Life Memes guy. Do you have anything you'd like us to ask him? And, we've got a few questions. We'll do this kind of at the end of this episode that are a little bit more about you. But this was it kind of fits within the topic that we're talking about. And he was more critical of Dank Pro-Life Memes. And I just thought, hey, we've got the guy right here. I'm just going to read you verbatim what he said, and I'm interested in anything that you have to say back to him, because he does comment pretty often on our stuff. He is sometimes respectful. So it's not just a troll kind of thing. So anyway, he said,
context. Thank you.
Yeah. He said, one reason I admire ERI is because of its commitment to civil and productive philosophical discourse. I appreciate that the folks at ERI try to be charitable and take the pro-choice approach at its strongest, as well as try to really understand what the opposition is saying. This approach is very much contrasted by Elijah and his account. In fact, I have found that his account has spawned numerous similar types of comments that simply employ snark and insults towards pro-choice positions and individuals. The question I would like asked is, how do you believe that we can have civil and respectful dialogue on this issue if yours and many similar accounts want to push uncharitable memes that do nothing but insult pro-choice advocates? What would you say to him?
That's actually the opposite of my goal. That last sentence is the opposite of my goal. My goal is to not attack like straw men. My goal is also not to attack pro-choice people. My goal has always been to attack the ideas and to, whenever possible, I guess, to promote civil discourse, but more importantly, for at least in terms of, kind of ranking my abilities as a meme page, is to promote understanding in terms of, actually, you have to understand what is being said in order to be able to respond to it. And so, like we were talking about earlier, there might be one version of the bodily rights argument that I might be responding to, where this guy might think that I'm not responding appropriately because I'm not responding to his version of it, right, or what he has heard. And so what I've done is I've made, I think, are they folders? Something like that, with a whole bunch of different types of memes. They're all categorized. Mm-hmm. And so I have a bodily autonomy one, and I have a personhood one, and stuff like that. And so what I'm hoping is what would happen is the people that would be using the memes in like a conversation or something would go through and they would say, okay, this is actually what this person is saying, or this is not what this person is saying, so I won't use it. But yeah, so my original intent, and my intent still, is not to just purely mock. Like I was saying before, it's convey truth first with some kind of like a sassy, kind of witty undertone, funny, right, stuff like that. But I also am not going to deny that other meme pages have come up and that they have taken an approach that I wouldn't necessarily agree with, or do it in my sense. And I've actually noticed that there's a lot of them on Instagram. And I've gotten messages from people who are like, hey, guess what? I created a meme page too, a pro-life meme page. You're a major inspiration of mine. I'm like, thank you. Your memes suck.
I want to defend you in one way, in that, and this is something that the different, kind of various staff and volunteers of Secular Pro-Life helped me realize, this might be part of why this pro-choice person named August is feeling like some of your memes are uncharitable, is you are responding directly to people that you see. You see these arguments. You're not just making up dumber versions of these arguments. Correct. But it's not maybe arguments that he is seeing very often. And it's also not arguments that we see very often, because we sort of have a selection bias thing that can happen when we do all of our outreach on college campuses. We are talking to a lot of the sharpest pro-choice people. And so, of course, we're very focused on responding to the toughest arguments. And so I remember having this conversation with Monica from Secular Pro-Life, and I was just saying, I basically don't hear people anymore say that we don't know when biological life begins. And she's like, are you kidding me? I hear this every other day.
Oh yeah.
Because they're doing a lot of their dialogue on Facebook and on Twitter, where people just do say dumber things. And so on one hand, I kind of want to say, in your defense, you are responding to people who are actually saying these things. It might not always be the top echelon of pro-choice philosophers, right, but these people exist.
Yes, they absolutely do exist, and the fact that I'm responding to them, like I wouldn't just be responding to like a pro-choice person I make up. Although at this point, some of the comments I would have to like I can't even make stuff up that is this awful. But at the same time, there is also a selection bias for me because the more comments that I run into, the more contextual memes I will make. And so for me, I would love to interact with people who are more like philosophically inclined or more self-critical or something like that. But like, one, I don't run into them very often because my news feed now doesn't allow that, because all it is just memes and terrible pro-choice comments. But two, I'm also in these fake, I have a fake pro-choice account on Facebook, and I am in these groups, and they are literally saying these things to each other all the time. And so like they exist. These people, I think, are more, there's more of them, at least in my spheres, than anybody else. And in fact, they kind of know me as a pro-choice person with my fake account. And so I tried a little bit to kind of push back a teeny, because I was like, I don't want to give away my hand, but I just want to see what they're thinking. And I asked something like, well, I forget what I asked, but it was something relatively nuanced. No response. And I went to a different group and I was like, okay, well, you know, I've heard people say this, but what about this? Nothing. And like, these are groups with like 16, 17, 18,000 people. And they are just, they do not care about the nuanced perspective. And plus, on a different angle, responding to the toughest arguments they're not very shareable memes. Like, no. It's funny though, because occasionally it'll be like, I'll make a meme that's like talking about let's just say the violinist. And it'll be like, I'll see like Clinton, Wilcox and Nathan and Scott. They're like, hey, I like it. And like maybe you and like other people that I know personally are like, yeah, that's funny. Or I see Clinton share it or something like that. I'm like, hey, thanks. But it's like 14 or 15 shares, right, or 14 or 15 likes, when like the average other post that talks about how dumb it is that people believe that life begins at birth, like that gets like 1,000. I'm like, what? So if I specifically focused on the more academic arguments, my page would never have gotten to the point where it is now. And while that's a shame that our conversations haven't gotten any better, those conversations are still there. And I just like to assume that the people that I'm talking to are new people, and that they're just getting into the debate, not that they've been making the same totally trash arguments for the last 4 years.
That right there is a charitable, read from you, to be fair.
Well, I don't even think that would be the appropriate response to the smart pro-choice arguments. I think that mocking and snark belong directed at the arguments and the ideas that are just so dumb, you shouldn't be using them. And that's why we're mocking them.
Right.
It's like, big brain, not there. Big brain ERI, big brain this person, Thomson, she's doing the violinist. And so I think that's not the appropriate format to respond to those arguments. The political cartoon only can go so far, and it can't be that deep because it has to be bite-sized, shareable content that's also funny. And so I think that's one of the reasons that we need different pro-life organizations doing different things. And that's why ERI does not run a meme page. We are interested in helping people understand those complex arguments and the nuanced responses they deserve. And so I think that we don't know when life begins biologically should be mocked and pointed out and berated, because we don't want people using that. I don't want people being pro-choice because they don't know the scientific facts or that they disregard them. And so I think that is an appropriate distinction to make. And when I have seen pro-life people try to use snark directed at pro-choice people who are trying to seek out the truth, and they're making that type of argument, they come off as being very bitter. I have seen people on Twitter who follow me and like and reply to my stuff at a fair amount that I know they're seeing us, and they're also following ERI and the other ERI staff members. And then they'll do like Twitter threads where they're ranting about, I have no idea how anyone could be pro-choice. Yeah. These arguments are bogus. And I'm like, you're not funny. They're being very snarky. They're being very mocking. but they're coming across as I so smart Reddit, and it's just really cringy.
Mhm.
And so I'm glad that you're not going after the violinist in a mocking way. I think you can do it in a humorous way, but people who, you know, have read Thomson's paper and are persuaded by that because they haven't heard a great response, I think that's okay. I don't think they're stupid. I think there are better arguments than the violinist, which you'll hear about in the future. But I think that it's appropriate to be that way.